Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Behold how good it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity. Last year, I had the opportunity to travel to Lithuania with some of my classmates from Hebrew Union College. We spent most of our time in cities like Vilna and Kovno, which were once known as Yerushalayim Delita, the Jerusalem of Lithuania. These beautiful cities with painful histories were once capitals of Jewish learning, Yiddish theater and poetry, and even the birthplace of major Jewish activist movements such as the Bund. On one day during our trip, we visited a handful of Holocaust memorials. Some were as insultingly minimized as a small plaque on the outer wall of a mini-mart, memorializing a field where a mass murder took place. Others were profound and moving, with monumental statues and eternal flames. We concluded this difficult day by visiting the only Jewish nursing home in Lithuania. Sit with them, urged the nurses as we walked into this room with a circle of familiar-looking faces. They all looked like slight variations of my own grandparents. Oh, also, the nurse said, they don't know any English, and they also don't know any Hebrew. We spent the next hour sitting with the residents, singing, smiling, pantomiming a lot, and feeling an indescribable sense of connection, despite lacking a common language. Before parting ways with our new friends, a resident named Ruta took my hand in hers. Though I had only just met her, her hand felt warm and familiar. Hold on, her eyes told me. She began rummaging through her purse. The nurse sitting beside me explained, she wants to give you something. I'll share with you what her gift was soon. But in this moment, I couldn't help but wonder why I felt so inexplicably connected to this complete stranger who I had only just spent a handful of minutes with. A recent Pew study asked Jewish Americans to answer this question: what does it mean to be Jewish? There were many answers to this question, including things like eating Jewish foods, leading an ethical life, caring about Israel. But surpassing all of them by a landslide was remembering the Holocaust. 73% of Jewish Americans firmly believe that being Jewish means remembering the Holocaust. Holocaust remembrance is a critical Jewish act. Even more, it is a critical and fundamental human act. The methodical, mechanized, and malevolent effort to rid the world of an entire race of people because of the blood in their veins is not something we should ever pass over lightly. We must be adamant about ensuring Holocaust education is a mandatory requirement in all schools, and we must honor the 6 million and the millions of others who were murdered by remembering their lives and their cultures and their stories. This is part of how we safeguard Elie Wiesel's promise of never again. But the idea that Jews connect most strongly to their identities through remembering the Holocaust can pose a dilemma. What will happen once those who were personally involved in the Holocaust pass? With each generation, we are distancing ourselves further and further from the events of the Holocaust. What happens when Jews emphasize remembering the dead instead of also getting to know the living? Surely it matters, or should matter, that we find personally meaningful ways to connect to the very religion that the 6 million were slaughtered for. They weren't all religious. Some even claimed to be atheists. Perhaps many understood Aramaic or Hebrew, the language of our texts, but I'll bet many did not. They argued over philosophy and theology and business and education and how to stage a play and even the best chicken soup recipe. The 6 million were, in short, like any other modern people, vastly different from one another, yet bound by something. They were all bound by something powerful, something real, something holy. We need to find a focal point for relating to Judaism and connecting with other Jews that is not solely based on the trauma of the Holocaust. After all, what connected Jews to one another before the Holocaust? How might that Pew Study question have looked differently in 1875, or in 1322, or in 400 BCE during the Torah's canonization? There is something deeper connecting all Jews to each other and to our own Jewish identities. As we celebrate the Jewish New Year, this Rosh Hashana, I invite you to explore what this connection might be for you. There's no better time than now, as we enter the days of awe, to take time to evaluate what binds us all to each other. What is that oh so difficult to quantify connection that we feel to Judaism and to those sitting beside us in this very room? During the Holocaust, some Jewish parents resorted to hiding their children in convents. There, the children would be converted to Catholicism, and in that way conceal their Jewish identities until it was safe again. Of course, we know that many parents perished before they could bring their children back home. So a surviving rabbi took this responsibility upon himself. He went to a convent that was known to have hidden Jewish children during the war and asked the nuns if he could enter the children's quarters. "We have no Jewish children here," the nuns told the rabbi. "Please, let me see them for just 5 minutes," he pleaded. The nuns agreed, and they let him in. Inside, over 40 children were running and laughing and playing. The rabbi suddenly felt this overwhelming sense. How on earth am I to find which children in this room are Jewish amidst so many? Then it came to him. He moved a chair into the middle of the room. He stood on top of the chair, and he began praying. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. One by one, the Jewish children began gravitating toward the rabbi with a spark of comfort and nostalgia in their eyes. The Jewish children immediately recognized the melody from their Jewish upbringing, being kissed goodnight by their parents as the bedtime Shema rocked them to sleep. The rabbi, having found the Jewish children among the many, took them out of the convent and raised them as Jews. In this post-Holocaust story, it was not the remembrance of the Holocaust that connected the Jewish children to the rabbi. It was something even more profound. What connects each of you sitting here this afternoon for Rosh Hashana services to each other? What is the makeup of the glue that holds together this beautiful, warm, meaningful Shir community? Is it something cultural, like a shared appreciation for matzo ball soup or klezmer music? Is it a common value of education and lifelong learning and study, as we adhere to Deuteronomy's instructions to v'limadetem, to teach your children well? Or is it that we have absolutely nothing in common other than the instant familiarity of meeting someone who has a kind of similar background as you do? These are crucial, fundamental questions that I will be pondering during these days of awe, and I encourage you to join me. Now let's go back to Lithuania together for a moment. I want to tell you what Ruta, the woman in the Lithuanian nursing home, gave me. She rummaged through her purse with one hand, while her other hand held fast to mine. She pulled out a small, worn, hard-covered book, and she put it in my hand, and she smiled knowingly. "She wants you to keep it," the nurse translated, but I didn't need the nurse's translating. The small book that Ruta had given me was the Torah. That's when I knew we had been speaking the same language all along. Hine ma tovu manani, shevet achim gam yachad. Shana tova.